Okay. Thank you to everyone that's already joined. We will be waiting a couple of minutes probably just to see how many other people rock up. Hope everyone's having a good start to their week. Oh, that's good. I've got an update that's just asked if it can do it. So it might make my computer go slow now, but hopefully not. Okay, we're up to double figures. I think we had more than 20 registered, so let's just leave it about another minute or so. Okay, you can see lots of familiar names and a couple that are new to me, so thanks everyone that's joined. I will just start now because obviously it is a minute past 11. This session is due to be 45 minutes. It may not be quite that long. You might get a bit of time back, but we'll see. So I will share my screen now, and Elaine, if you could let me know when you can see my slide deck, that would be wonderful.
Yep, got it.
You got me? Excellent. Okay, we're up to 18. As I say, I think we're probably expecting maybe a couple more. It'd be nice to get to 20, but as it is, we'll begin. Obviously, this session is being recorded. You will receive the recording afterwards if you want to go back and watch this, or indeed if you want to share with a colleague. This session is all about the XCD to Hireserve integration. So if you look in the top left and top right hand corner of this slide, you will see Hireserve and you will see XCD. As a company, XCD owns Hireserve, but in terms of being an integrated system, we like to think that this is a nicely integrated recruitment into HR system. If you're on the call today, and I've noticed a couple of names that do not use either the XCD or the Hireserve system, you might find this session's not very useful for you. You're more than welcome to stay, but this session really is specifically focused on using that integration. Obviously, you need a license to both systems in order to use both parts of it, and therefore, if you are, as I say, sitting there and thinking, we only use Hireserve and not XCD, or vice versa, you may not learn anything today. But as I say, you're more than welcome to sit in and watch it anyway. On that note, we've got myself and Elaine on this call. I'm going to lead the session. Elaine is here to monitor the chat. So if you have any questions as we go through it, please do ask your questions in the chat, and Elaine will either answer the question if she can in the chat. If not, she might stop me and ask the question out loud. There will be also an agenda to do a Q&A at the end. So if you want to save your questions for the end, listen to the walkthrough, listen to the known issue explanation, and then save it for the end, then you're welcome to do so, but it's up to you. All right. And on that note, I've skipped straight to the end. That's good. On that note, it's time to go through a walkthrough of our user guide. So a user guide has been created in the past few weeks, and we will send this out to everyone to begin with. But I want to just start by talking you through it. So, sorry, what I mean is we will send this out after the session, but I wanted to talk you through it now. So, XCD and Hireserve. Your integration will have been set up once upon a time by the professional services team. And the first thing to note is that your integration can be amended if needed. Okay, it needs to be amended by us. So if that's something that you want to do at the end of this call, please get in touch with your account manager and we can look at how you want to change integration and we can roll that out. But just want to cover off some. I think there's been some misunderstandings in the past, and I think what's happened is, and the reason we're running this session is there have been some comments about, oh, the integration doesn't do this, or it does do that, or it doesn't work in the way you want it to work. And I think there's been a lot of confusion about the best way to use the integration. We've actually been through literally tens of support tickets looking at the advice that you've been given over the years, and I think that advice has probably changed. So some customers that might have been using the integration a year ago, 2 years ago, might think it works in a certain way, and actually there's now a better way. So this session is really to just set the record straight. This is the best way of using it, and hopefully you'll all learn something, even if you think you already know the best way of using this. So integration might be set up in a certain way, but can be amended. First things first, creating the role and the advert. If you're using both file systems, you will be aware that when you look at the system in XCD and you're in your HR system, you will have an area for vacancies. Now the vacancies page will look something like this. You can see here that I'm logged in and I am looking at a role for an audit manager, and this is a vacancy that we've created about for that role. We've got all the overarching information, like the structural information, as we call it. So we know what company it reports to. We know it's in the legal department in Bristol, and you can see some recruitment information, so some people information. So this role is going to be hired by Fiona. The hiring manager is Barbara. I've got job description field, which I haven't filled in, and I've got salary and compensation fields. Now, of course, all of this stuff can travel across to Hireserve when we create a vacancy. So let me go back to that document. So what does the integration do? The integration pushes vacancies from XCD into Hireserve. Now, there are some mandatory fields to make this work. The mandatory fields are entirely dependent, looking above, at what you've set up in your integration. Okay, so what we've said here is these could include, but aren't limited to, anything like this. So apologies, that color there I can't read because it's really affecting my eyes. But it says it could include, but not limited to, job title, vacancy status, vacancy notes, or company, department. There we go. Location, grade. Then we've got 4 different people fields, job description, responsibilities, etc. So your vacancy and your mandatory fields might not be the same as the next company along. You might have said that we're going to have responsibilities as mandatory, and the next company has said that's not mandatory. If we pull it through to Hireserve, we will just add to it in Hireserve. The point being is, I can't tell you, and unfortunately from a guide, we can't tell you the exact mandatory fields that you need. But what we can do is suggest to you, as it says in the next paragraph, it's important for you to ask the support team or your account manager if you don't know which mandatory fields you need to fill in. This can be different for every customer. So going back to my vacancy in XCD, and really just to hammer this home, XCD allows you to create custom fields, right? So I've got here, we've set up for the demo, custom field 1, custom field 9. Now, in your world, custom field 1 might be something like, I don't know, visa status. So a company might say, oh yeah, I have visa status and I need to make whether or not it's mandatory. Are we entering whether or not we're going to accept visas for this role? And another company says, well, we don't have that field. So it's up to you to decide in your integration, do you want that to be mandatory or not? If you want it to be mandatory and pull across to Hireserve, then going back to the guide, I'll click the wrong button. Again, big blue thing there. We can set that up if that's the way you want it. But again, it depends on how it's currently setting. So it's important that we understand which one the mandatory fields are. And as it says next, these must be populated. If they're not all filled in, then it will create an error and it won't generate a URL or an ID. So what does that mean? So when we have a role like this and we fill in all the right fields and we publish it, publish the vacancy, you get a vacancy URL. Now this one I've got here is a generic URL that goes out to a job page. As you can see, I don't have a Hireserve job URL. What that will mean is I have tried to publish it and I have failed to fill in all of the correct fields. What that then does is, as you can imagine, it sends the data to Hireserve and Hireserve goes, I needed a base salary field, for example. Maybe we haven't filled that one in, or let's use the one below. Hireserve might say, well, I've got target OTE as a mandatory field. You haven't filled it in. And a bit like when you're on an online form or you're filling in your credit card details when you're buying something, you miss a field and it goes, nope, that didn't work. And it takes you back to the same page and it gives you the error at the top saying, you need to fill in a certain field and it doesn't complete the transaction. That's what this is. It's saying I couldn't fill in that. I couldn't fill in all the requisites for creating that job in Hireserve. It's just not created on. There's no URL there. Now I've seen advice in support tickets about maybe it's a timeout or a connection issue or something. It's not. If you've been told that, then I apologize. If it doesn't create the URL, it is because we didn't have all the fields filled in that we should have had. Okay. Now, as I've put here, or as we put here, if you don't want to enter text against a specific mandatory field, you could actually just add a space or write none or blank or NA or something. So say, for example, you have target OTE as a mandatory field, but maybe that role doesn't have an on-target earnings. Then rather than leave it blank, you would just put 65,000 in and for that field as well, because the base salary is 65, the OTE is 65. That's an example. Another example might be that you have job description as a mandatory field. Maybe you haven't actually finalized what your job description looks like yet. So for now, you can just put pending or none or awaiting job description or something. You need to fill in something in order to make the integration work. You can't just leave the field blank if, again, it's a mandatory field. So let me edit something and we'll bring this up. So as I said, let's bring up custom field. Now, what you can do on the Exceed side to make your lives easier is this form, you can denote all the mandatory fields on this form. Support can help you to do that. Your account manager might be able to help you to do that. It doesn't need to go to professional services. It's a pretty straightforward thing to do. So say, for example, job title, you see the little red asterisk, that's mandatory. My next fields aren't mandatory. Where's the next mandatory field? Job description is mandatory. It's got the little red asterisk. I haven't set much of this up as mandatory, as you can see. The point is we can set those fields up to be mandatory, and it might be a good way of working so that your vacancy page actually has the same mandatory fields as what the integration requires. That would actually then prevent anyone from being able to save a vacancy and miss some of those mandatory fields. Okay. I'll just finish this next bit, then I'll just stop and see if there are any questions that have come in. Mandatory metadata. Now, metadata is a bit of a funny word, but it's just data that sits in a database. So another reason the integration can fail is that you could have mandatory fields that basically we don't tally on both sides. So going back to my previous screen, in yellow, I've got people data, the authorizing manager, the interviewer, the hiring manager. Again, you could set these fields up in Hireserve to be mandatory, which means, again, going back to this page here in Exceed, if you have it mandatory in Hireserve that we need to know hiring manager, but I don't have it mandatory here in my system, there is nothing to stop me submitting my form without a hiring manager. But let's say you have done that and you've gone, actually, we've got Christopher Akey is our hiring manager. The next problem that could exist, and again, the reason that the integration would fail, is the metadata needs to match. So if you have a people field in Hireserve, if you have a people field such as hiring manager as a manager field, you must have them in Hireserve as well as XCD. Okay. So again, if you don't have Christopher Akey as a person in Hireserve, the system will try and set this form up, and it will go, okay, we've got mandatory fields filled in. That's great, but on these people fields, Hireserve doesn't know who Christopher Akey is. There's no record of Christopher Akey. It falls over and says, I don't know who you're trying to denote as the hiring manager. And it's like that credit card form again, which says, I just don't recognize these details. In that example, you'd have to go into the system and go, does Christopher Akey exist? Oh, no, he doesn't. Add him. Then you can create your vacancy. The other thing is that can also be some of the structural data, like department. So if I had that here, which maybe I don't, let's say we've got employment status. Let's say I've got these 5 drop downs for structural data like employment status. In XCD, I could say this person's an agency temp. When I try and send that across, again, you get the picture here. If it's mandatory, it goes, does that list value exist in Hireserve? If no, the form fails and it says we can't create your URL. Now, if you fill that in on a non-mandatory field, it doesn't matter, So if you've got a field like agency temp and you add a new one in XCD, casual, and you want to send it across, if it's a non-mandatory field in the integration in Hireserve, it doesn't matter. It just won't find a value and it will just be blank. But in the world where it's mandatory, it has to find a value that exists on both sides. All right. So I think that's all of the stuff around creating the vacancy, actually making sure that the vacancy you've created in XCD actually sets up a requisition in Hireserve. And I will just stop now because obviously I've been talking at you for 15 minutes. Are there any questions? Elaine, does anything come in around specifically around metadata or basically just getting the vacancy to exist?
No, there's nothing in the chat at the moment, unless anyone's got a live question that they want to come off mute and ask.
I don't think they can come off mute, so you can ask a question in the chat if you have a question.
Sorry.
It's all right, just in case someone had background noise or anything. No.
Nothing.
All self-explanatory. Cool, good. So moving on to editing live roles. Again, I think this is an area where different people try and do this differently, and we have a preferred or a recommended way of doing it. So you've created your vacancy in XCD, you've sent it across to Hireserve, everything's gone wonderfully because you've got all your metadata and everything matching and it's all wonderful. Now you want to amend it. So looking at this example, we have our base salary here of 65,000. Maybe we're not getting any bites. There's not been any applications. We go, all right, next thing we might try is let's increase the base salary. Let's take it to 70,000 instead. If you do this in XCD, it is not a live integration. Okay, so just by doing that and hitting save, that doesn't update Hireserve. If you do that and you hit publish, it can update Hireserve, but it's not the way we would recommend it. Okay, I'll explain why. That would be option 2. Make your changes in XCD, manually push the changes to Hireserve. The benefit is that you're maintaining the record in both systems. That's fine. But the negative is that when you push a change, it will push the vacancy back into draft status. Okay. The reason being is, ultimately we should have a level of human check. If, as an example, I'm advertising a job that pays £20,000 and someone accidentally does a typo and suddenly it's £200,000, it goes into Hireserve, into draft status, and then the recruiter that wants to make it active should see that and go, that can't be right. Let's not advertise a role on our website at 200 grand when it should be 20. Any changes you make, it kind of goes through the same process. So I could go in here as a XCD admin and go, oh yeah, the team have asked me to push a change, and actually they're now going to advertise this role at 70,000. Fine, I do that there. Again, it goes into draft status. The recruitment team needs to go in and say that's fine. And for that reason, we wouldn't recommend publishing changes through here. So we'd recommend using the vacancy to create your role and then leave it. And if you want to make changes, it's very common to make changes in the recruitment phase. But what we would say is the recommended option would be to do all your editing in Hireserve. That's it. Do all your editing in Hireserve. Leave XCD alone once the vacancy's been pushed. The integration isn't live, so it only pushes data when told to do so. If you leave it, by it I mean XCD alone, don't push any changes, it won't amend things in Hireserve. The reason that we're saying to do that is, well, there's a couple of reasons, but the most important one is that the XCD system and the integration between the systems is set up that when we create the vacancy from XCD into Hireserve, when you hire the successful candidate, they'll push back to XCD. They'll always push back to XCD, but it's easier for your recruitment team, the ones that are actually there in the weeds, the ones that are doing the recruiting. It's easier for them to make changes in Hireserve and not necessarily have to be an admin on your XCD system and come to someone who is an admin and say, hey, we now want to push that this role is also available in Bristol or something like that, and say, oh, it's actually now Bristol and Swansea. It's easier for the people that are doing the recruitment to be admins in Hireserve and make their changes in Hireserve. Okay. The only other thing I think to mention on that is in terms of the editing functionality. When you create a vacancy in Hireserve, it can be the case that you choose to lock fields. And again, this would come back to your implementation. It could be, and I've seen this with some customers, that you say, I want to create my vacancy and certain fields lock after we do it. Now, an example might be department. Department, it's in our legal department. It's never going to not be in our legal department. Just lock that field and it can't be edited in Hireserve. All of your fields that get pushed from XCD into Hireserve can lock after the integration has set them up. So it could be a department, it could be a salary, it could be whatever. It's up to you whether you maintain or keep that or whether you just make all fields open to be editable in Hireserve. So I can't really advise you on which way you want to do it, but from the point where you set the vacancy up from XCD into Hireserve, you might decide all fields remain open, i.e. they don't lock. And if you choose to do that, you'll be able to edit anything in Hireserve. If you set it that, some fields lock, then obviously you wouldn't be able to update them in Hireserve. So that's up to you and up to your business processes, how you choose to do that and whether or not fields lock or don't lock. Anyway, as I put at the bottom, regardless of how you get to the point of hiring someone, it still pushes the candidate with all their documents and everything we know about them to XCD, so long as you've used the integration to create the initial role. If you don't use the integration to create the initial role, you will probably find issues downstream where you try to send the candidate to XCD and it goes, I don't know what record ID this is. I don't know what you're trying to do, and it won't work. So the headlines here, the summary really is create your role in XCD, push it to Hireserve. From that point, allow your recruiters and anyone that needs them to be admins in Hireserve and do their editing in Hireserve. And at the point that you hire your successful candidate, they come back into XCD and we have all their documentation and their notes, etc. All right, so that's the final piece on the actual mechanics of the issue. The final piece I want to talk to you about, and this might take 10 minutes or so, so as I say, we might finish slightly early, depending on whether there's Q&A, is there is one known issue, and literally only one known issue, which is a known issue regarding special characters and formatting. So we are aware that when you enter text in the fields, certainly for things like job description, requirements, when you transfer to Hireserve, this can appear broken. The most common things you will see is things like apostrophes start to get these almost like, if I zoom in a bit further, here, this kind of AE trademark sign, or the A, the sort of Swedish Scandinavian A with the E, or it might even be a Euro sign. Anyway, as it says there, this is most commonly seen with quotations, apostrophes, and other punctuation, which may appear as garbled symbols. By the way, you're welcome to read this full article on our support portal here about known issues page about special characters. However, there's some ways around this. So I'm just going to talk you through the workarounds. Quite simply, Hireserve doesn't like Microsoft Word characters. Salesforce doesn't mind it too much, so that's XCD doesn't mind it too much. So in XCD, you might paste something from your job description that you're maintaining. So you should see that here, your dentist's job description. And you say, right, I've got my job description here, and I copy that, and I go to my job description here, and I paste it, and I go, wonderful, that all looks great. Now, the problem we've got is actually apostrophes, etc., that are in this body of text. Microsoft is being clever and being, it's a text editing tool, and it allows you to do things like this and go, hey, I want to display this in a different font. And you go, brilliant. And obviously we've all just grown up going, well, that works beautifully. And we don't know how it works, but it does. Now, behind the scenes, there's a lot of very clever stuff in Microsoft Word to make it a nice experience for us. And if we actually want to go into this is something that I only learned about recently, and this is in the known the workaround area of that known issues. What we can actually do in Word is we can disable some of that clever stuff going on that makes this paragraph look all nice and formatted. If you go to File, and at the bottom you go to Options, you get some options here where we can say, right, proofing, autocorrect options. Now, you were never aware this existed. I certainly wasn't aware of this until like last week. Autocorrect options, it's telling you what formatting it does as you type. So we have autocorrect. So this is quite cool, actually. You can go in here and say, like, if I spell a word as about with two B's, autocorrect it to about spelled correctly, which, you can add your own, which is quite fun. However, you've got mathematical autocorrect, and then you have auto format. And in auto format, we will see the top button, straight quotes with smart quotes. That is the root of all evil when it comes to Hireserve. That is the bit where behind the scenes, it's turning your apostrophes to be slightly curlier or slightly more, better looking. And that is what they call, smart quotes. That's your ampersands, that's your apostrophes, all just looking a bit nicer, but hiding behind it. They have this hidden formatting that Hireserve doesn't like. So you've got a couple of options. You can either do that and do all your typing without smart quotes, and you should see far fewer issues. Or the other option we've got is Notepad. Now, you may have never used Notepad. If you go in and search Notepad in your list of tools, you'll see Notepad there as an app as such that comes with Microsoft. And what Notepad does is it removes all the clever stuff. So if I take all of Microsoft Word and paste it here, it looks horrible, right? But that is what that is actually what it would look like without all of Word's clever formatting. Now, if you paste from here into our job description box, like so, it looks the same, but it will work better. So that's another option. We can go there. If you want to be really, really, really sure that you've removed the formatting, even from within Notepad, you can go here, you can go edit, and you can go clear formatting. Click that. It doesn't look any different because it's already sort of cleared the formatting for me. You can go edit, clear formatting, and again, now we're sort of triply sure that we've removed all that pesky formatting that Hireserve doesn't like. If you do that, you should find that there are, I don't want to say no issues because, that'll probably come back to bite me, but there should be far fewer issues. They should be hopefully all resolved. All right, so that is the way to get around the formatting issue, which is stick your Word doc in Notepad, paste from there, and away you go. All right, so that is what all this text here, that is what it's saying, in practice. So it's saying, the issue caused by Word's proprietary characters, what are the recommended? Disable smart quotes, which we've just done, which it shows you how to do that there, or use a plain text editor, which is Notepad, to strip out the formatting and special characters and copy it straight from there into XCD. All right. If you do those, if you follow those steps, if you create your role in XCD, but you know what mandatory fields you need to fill in, if you make sure the metadata like department or grade or authorizing manager exists in both XCD and Hireserve, when you send it across, everything should work fine. If you edit your roles in Hireserve, that's the better way of doing it because then your roles don't go back to draft status. And if you do your formatting in here, then everything should be wonderful. And we would welcome, obviously, any further support tickets if they do come in, if you're following all those steps and it's not working. But on that note, I will stop sharing and welcome any questions that might have come in.
Got nothing in the chat, Jamie?
No, Tom asked if the session's been recorded. Yes, it is, Tom. You'll receive the recording after the session. Cool. If there's nothing else, I've just got one small favor to ask, I suppose, which is on this final page. If anyone that is watching found that even somewhat useful, again, we will follow up with the guide. Please do just grab your phone and scan that QR code, get your camera out, scan that QR code, and just leave us a bit of feedback about the session. This session came directly from a number of support tickets that we'd received. I won't name names of customers, but some customers in particular have found the formatting issue to be really troublesome. Some have reported, for example, the roles not creating in Hireserve. We've actually done probably more prep for this one than any other session that we've ever run because we got to the bottom of all those issues. As I say, we've produced this guide and then hopefully trained you on, why those issues crop up. So if you could just do us a favor and fill in the evaluation form about whether or not you actually did indeed learn anything, whether it's useful, that would really help us because we put a lot of hours into this, and obviously to provide, to present it all in a 30-minute slot. Quite a lot of hours went into condensing that into 30 minutes for you. So if you do have 2 minutes just to scan that and send us back an evaluation, that would be really, really appreciated. The other thing is on that evaluation form, we have a separate area where you can suggest any other topics. As I say, this one came about for a few suggestions and a lot of support tickets. If you have any suggestions of things that you might want to see in future XCD or Hireserve University sessions, please submit them via that form. And with that being said, I think we're good to wrap up. So If you want to start jumping off, I'm going to leave the screen showing just in case anyone's trying to scramble for their phone to look at that QR code. But otherwise, if you want to start jumping off, and we'll hopefully see you next month for the next session.
Thanks, everybody.
Good. Cheers, Elaine. Cheers, Johnny. Let's jump off so that the recording finishes. Bye-bye.